Hello there, and welcome to this review of This War Without an Enemy. This is an English Civil War game, 1642 to 1646. It is a block war game, and on the topic of block war games, I just wanted to make a quick comparison versus the Columbia games like Hammer of the Scots and Julius Caesar. This game, if you've played those games or if you're similar with them, this game is going to feel somewhat familiar because it uses the same base system of blocks with Fog of War. Um, I think the difference here is obviously besides the different theme is the complexity. This game takes that system, that base block system, and basically dials up the complexity, making it much more of a simulation. So that has a plus and a minus. I think a game like Hammer of the Scots has something like 6 or 8 pages of rule book of rules. This rule book here, as you can see, is much longer. So let's see how many pages this has. Um, this has 18 pages of rules. So it's much more complex than those games. It's a more advanced game, but that's also a plus because you get more from this game. I think it's a more it's a deeper system. It's a deeper game than those games. There's more going on here. So if you like to go beyond an introductory a block game, block war game, this is the game for you. I think in terms of components, I've done another separate video on the components, but just to emphasize that the components here are absolutely top notch. This is a I'm just gonna pan out a little bit. This is a mounted uh, board that shows the whole of the UK or the whole of England. Um, it's mounted. It's looks really beautiful on a table. The box of the game looks beautiful as well, and the 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 blocks as well are also great. Obviously, they come without a sticker, so you need to stick these. You need to put the stickers on, but um, yeah, also really good quality. Um, Basically, the objective of the game is to get to 3 victory points. Um, and you can see here there's a victory point track here at the bottom. So in this case, the victory point track right now, this is 0. This is the royalists, and this is the parliamentarians. So the objective is to get to 3 victory points. And the game, like I've started to mention, opposes the parliamentarians in orange to the royalists, King Charles and his supporters in blue. The game comes. Oh, and by the way, you get to 3 victory points to get a major win. But if you end the scenario without any player having reached 3 victory points, whoever has the most victory points gets a minor victory. The game comes with 4 different scenarios, and it comes from like small scenarios to the full war scenario, which obviously takes much longer. Like I said, the game is based on blocks. I want to emphasize that I've put here a setup, but the game when you play the game actually doesn't look like this. So again, like in Columbia block war games, the players would be sitting on these sides, and the blocks would be like this. So there's a fog of war component. So if you're the royalist player, you're sitting on this side, you're seeing what your blocks are, and if you're the parliamentarian player, you're sitting on this side, and you're seeing what the blocks are. So there is all the blocks are upright, and they move upright, etc. Like in most at least block war games. So there's a fog of war component. For the purpose of this video, I've just put the blocks like this on the table, so it face up, so it's easier to see what the blocks are. But again, bear in mind that This is there is fog of war in this game. You don't see um, your opponent's blocks until a battle starts. Um, in terms of the blocks themselves, there are three types of blocks in this game. Like I said, orange for the parliamentarians, blue for the royalists. Um, there are three types of blocks on this game. So, first type is cavalry. So you've got a little horse there at the top. Basically, you've got the name. We've got the region of the block. So Gloucester. You've got the strength, which are these dots here. So this block is at 3 strength. When it loses strength, it becomes 2 strength, and eventually 1 strength. And then if it suffers another hit, it's eliminated. And these marks tell you how many dice are going to get rolled in battle. So 3, 2, 1. There's also an indication here of the region of the block. The effectiveness of the block, which is basically how much do you need to roll to be able to score a hit on your opponent in battle. This is a little bit different from some of the other games where you need to score high. In this game, you need to score low. So without any modifiers, imagining that there's no modifiers, you need to score a 1 or a 2 with this block to inflict a hit on your opponent. So it's a little bit different. You need to roll lower, but it's at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's just a different way to look at it. And then also you have here the cavalry discipline, which tells you whether the cavalry is going to stay on the battlefield or if they're going to go merrily off to pursue their cavalry enemies in battle. There are some blocks that have the name. If they're a leader block, they have the name. So, for example, in this case, you've got Northampton. In this case, you've got the King Charles the First, Rupert. And then there's 2 other types of blocks. There's the artillery blocks, which show a cannon and have like a cannon symbol there, and the infantry blocks, which look like this. So this is the London. This is one of the London infantry blocks for the parliamentarian player. I think that's basically it for the blocks. One important thing to say is that the regional indication is important because it tells you whether a block can move freely or if they need to be chaperoned by a leader to move to another region, and then they need to, at some point, they need to go back into their region. So the game is done in a way that it allows you to do whatever you want in terms of, well, not whatever you want, but it allows you to have some freedom in terms of movement, etc. But it keeps historical accuracy through these regional blocks that show that these blocks belong to a region and they need to be chaperoned to move out, and they will eventually come back. In terms of the board, as you can see, the board is separated into a bunch of different regions, and a couple of things here are in white. These white spaces here are mountains. So there's a mountain passage there, and the blue spaces are rivers. So you can see there the blue spaces. And this will affect so blue rivers and white mountains. This will affect your ability to move, how much you can move, etc. And then there's also cities in the game. So you can see here, for example, Oxford is a city. And the cities basically have a size. They have if they have this polygon around them, it means that they're currently fortified. So the big cities are fortified, like York, Newcastle. London's fortifications are incomplete at the start of the game. and you also have minor cities, which have like Cambridge here, which have like a circle around them. They're not fortified. Um, and basically the cities are important because they give you victory points. So you see here the Cambridge gives you 1 victory point if you control it, Oxford 1 victory point, London 2 victory points. um, yeah, so different city, York 1 victory point. So different cities give you different VPs, which you need to control those cities in order to be able to advance your VPs and eventually win the game. Cities are also important because they give you supply. So supply is obviously a theme in this game. The number of blocks that you can have on a certain space. So for example, if you see here on this space, we've got on this region here, we've got a ton of blocks. You need to be certain at the end of the turn that you're able to supply them, and cities give you extra supply according to size. There's also ports. There's also port. You see here Chester, a port. You see here another port, and there's sea spaces that are like separated, like you see here, because there is sea movement, and that comes into play as well. Um, in terms of cards, if we look at the cards for a bit, um, the basic game, basically the game is driven by cards. There are 52 cards in the game, so 26 for each player. These are separate decks, so they're not shared decks. One deck looks like this on the back for the king. So this is the royalist deck, 26 cards, and then the other deck, Parliament, 26 cards. The cards all come with basically a number of action points. You can see here 3 action points, 3, 4. I believe they all come with either 2, 3, or 4 victory points. Cards that have 4 victory points just have the victory points, they have nothing else. Cards that have 2 or 3 victory points, they have an event. So, for example, you see here, this card has 3 victory points, gives you, 3 action points, not victory points, 3 action points, and it has an event called Desertion of Regional Troops. If we take a look here at the Royalist deck, 2 action points, event Camp Fever, 3 action points, event the King strips the garrisons. The cards are really nice as well. Again, keeping with the components. The cards are really nice. I like the illustrations. I like the way the cards look and feel. I think they're also really nice. Again, adding to the historical flavor of the game. One thing that I will mention at the end, because I will mention my rating for the game at the end. One thing is there's also a number here at the bottom which indicates with an arrow, which indicates a year and whether that card needs to be added or removed. So for example, you see here 1643. There's an arrow on top, and this one has 1643 with an arrow on the bottom. This indicates if the cards need to be added or removed from the deck at the end of a year. So it's all about basically deck management. It's a little bit more. It's a bit stricter than in some of other games. So basically, the game players are going to have cards on their hands, and they're gonna choose in the beginning of a round. They're going to choose a card to play, and for example, let's say that the royalist has chosen this card 4, and the parliamentarian has chosen this card 3. The royalist is going to be the first player because they've played the card with the higher action points. And then so the royalist in this case would play first, and then after they do all of their action, the parliamentarian would get to play their card. And basically the way this works is, first of all, any events that have been played are triggered. So in this case, the parliamentarian player has played an event. So this event is triggered if it makes if it makes sense, and if there was a second event, it would have also been played. But in this case, there is no event here. There's just action points. So after players trigger their events, basically, and let's look at the example of the royalist player. I have 4 action points. So I need to use those 4 action points. What can I do with the action points? Basically, the first thing that I can do is a group move that costs me 1 action point, where I basically activate a region and I move the blocks in that region as far as they can go to other regions. So I can do, for example, I can activate here Cheshire. I have 2 blocks here. I can move 1 block here, for example, and leave the other one there. Or I can move both blocks, or I can move one in one direction and one in another direction. So I need to comply, obviously, with the chaperoning that I mentioned with the leaders. But in this case, you can see here the purple line. This is the region of the block. So the block, I could do this move, or I could do this move, or I could do this move. There's a few different options in terms of group move. So with 4 action points, obviously I could do 4 group moves, or I could mix and match. Another thing that I could do is muster, and in terms of mustering, it works a little bit different. I am selecting an area, and for example, let's say I select this one here, and I can move blocks from other areas into that area. So for example, I could do this and this. So blocks from 2 different areas have moved into the area where I've done the mustering. I can also do C moves. C moves have a potential. There's basically a table, a C move table. So for 1 AP, for 1 action point, I can do a C move. But I was just looking through this. But I need to roll a die, and bad things can happen to that block, or I can succeed in my C move. So there's a risk in moving through the C. There's also some modifiers if you move through X enemy Cs, etc. So there's a risk, high risk, high reward, I guess, in moving through the C. The other thing that you can do is you can recruit, and you can recruit. Recruiting means that you can, for 1 AP, you can increase the strength of a block. Let's say that this block, and again, my opponent wouldn't see this because the block would be like this. But the block, let's say the block is like this at 3 strength. At 3 strength. For 1 AP, I can recruit and add +1 strength. For 2 APs, I could move this block from strength 2 to strength 4. Or I can say I'll use 1 AP to strengthen this block and 1 AP to strengthen this block. So I can use it on different blocks or use it on the same blocks, whatever I want, as long as I have enough action points. The other thing that I could do is I could take some blocks from my recruitment pool and put them at strength 1 on the map. So for example, if we go here, we have, I've put here some blocks which are the parliamentarian blocks in recruitment pool. So I could get a block from here, and I could place it for 1 AP. I could place it at strength 1 in its region, which is an S. So that's going to be south. And there's the also the rec for the royalist. So these are kind of the things that I can do, and then we go to the tactical phase after. So after I've used my APs and my opponent has also used their APs. So in this case, I would use my 4 APs and my opponent would use then their 3 APs from this card. So this is the Parliamentarian. We go to the tactical phase, where we're going to do any tactical events are going to be played. So actually, I believe this card here would have been, so this card, which has a T for tactical, would be triggered now. This is the card that the Parliamentarian played in the beginning. So it says, well-positioned artillery, choose a battle. One artillery block in this battle may fire in routes 2 and 3. So this changes the rule of the battles. So any tactical events are triggered, if any. Then we move to battles, and then we move to sieges. Basically, in terms of battles, there is a separate mat here, which is not mounted. It's paper, but it's fine. And basically, what we have here, I'm just gonna brush these over to the side, and I'm gonna put it here so it's easier. Basically, we have the defender side, we have the attacker side, we have here the round marker. So there's going to be a total of 3 rounds in the battle that's going to take place, or 1, 2, or 3 rounds that a battle can have, no more than that, which I actually like because it makes the battles quite meaningful. It makes everything in a battle feel quite meaningful. And then, so if there's multiple battles, we're going to choose, and obviously battles, goes without saying, happen when blocks from the 2 different sides are in the same region, like this. So in this case, we have 3 blocks from the Parliamentarian, 1 from the Royalists, so they would engage in battle. The battles, basically, there's an attacker, there's a defender, there's a thing called reserves. So basically, if so the moment that these blocks have come into the same region, and one of the players has moved the blocks here, there's going to be a battle, but more blocks can be added during that round through other action points. So if the attacker adds more blocks, so for example, let's say that the attacker added this another block during another AP, this block is called a reserve, and the defender also adding other blocks there would be reserves. So these reserves, like the name implies, come in later. So basically, the attacker, if they had any blocks that crossed other borders, are reserves. The defender, any reinforcements that they've added are also reserves. So the battle and the sieges are like a sort of mini game within the game. So basically, you see, we have the defender side, you have the attacker side, and these are the things that you can do. So basically, the defender can try to withdraw before the battle starts, and there's a table for that. Let me check if I can. So yeah, so there's a table for that. So the defender can attempt a withdrawal before the battle starts. So again, there's some modifiers here, and the defender is gonna roll to see if they're successful or not. And by the way, these are some player rates. There's a couple of player rates that come with the game that basically talk about the game turn and have some of these battles and some of the main rules. So 1 for each player. That's pretty nice. Then basically, let's imagine that there's no withdrawal. The blocks are moved here. So let's say that this is a reserve. So we're going to place it here in the reserve side. So as you can see, this is divided into reserves: artillery, firing infantry, cavalry, engaging infantry, routing cavalry. Let's say that this one is here, engaging infantry, and then I've got here artillery, and I've got 3 infantry blocks. So these two, we said that these 2 are reserves, and then we have this infantry block, which is Essex. So I can choose in each round. I can choose whether this block, the infantry block, is going to fire. It's going to be firing infantry or engaging infantry. There's a trade-off here because firing infantry goes first in the round. or earlier in the round, but at -1 efficiency, and has a penalty of -1. And engaging infantry has no penalties, but they go basically later. Um, the the battle follows this sequence here. Obviously, the player aids also have this sequence, but there's a sequence here, which basically in round 1, artillery is going to fire. So artillery only fires in round 1, but actually we had this card that says choose a battle. One artillery block in this battle may fire in rounds 2 and 3. So in this case, only the card breaks the rule, and the artillery block could fire in rounds 2 or 3, or else it just fires normally in round 1. And by the way, it goes without saying that this is the time in the game where both players put the blocks on the table, basically show the blocks to their opponents. So like I said, the blocks are like this, and then they're placed on the table on the battle mat like this. So you finally get to see for sure what is the strength that your opponent has in these armies. Again, fog of war. So basically, I mentioned artillery only fires in round 1. It has a penalty against cavalry, so it fires -1 against cavalry. Then infantry, if they're firing, they fire at -1. Then cavalry engage. So if there was any cavalry, let me just put cavalry here. If there was any cavalry, they would engage. They engage at +1 if the opponent has no cavalry. So in this case, the parliamentarians have one block of artillery and one block of infantry. Even the 2 blocks in reserve are infantry. So this block would engage. Cheshire would engage. Cavalry block would engage at +1. And then basically, what you're going to do is you have these dice. You have, the game comes with the 6 dice. Sorry, 8 dice. 2, so 4 orange and 4 blue. You're gonna roll a number of dice equal to the strength of your block. So basically, I'm just gonna get the dice here. So basically, this block, this cavalry block, has an effectiveness of 3. So we would roll 3 dice. Like I mentioned, the strength. Let me rephrase that. The strength of 3, so 3 dice, and you need to roll without any modifiers. You need to roll 1, 2, or 3 to produce a hit. Because, as I mentioned, the parliamentarians have no cavalry. This cavalry will actually have its effectiveness at +1. So that means that a 1 to 4 means a hit. So if we roll here, we got a 1, a 4, and a 5. So we got 2 hits. The 1 is not a hit. The 4 and the 5 are hits, obviously. So this means that the parliamentarians would have to take 2 damage here. And basically the damage means you take a hit on your strongest block, and for each hit you basically reduce the block strength by 1. So Essex, 1 hit, strength goes down to 3, and then there would be another hit. From the second round onwards, you can each side can attempt a general retreat. There's also a retreat table that basically allows you to see if you're able to retreat or not. And the reserves then come into play starting in round 2. So these reserves would eventually join the fray. So there's a strategic element here of whether you're not doing so well on the first round, but actually you know that the reserves are coming. So you can actually plan for that. During the cavalry engage, there's also one other thing, which is the cavalry might abandon the battlefield to pursue your enemy. So you're going to have to roll here against the cavalry discipline to see if you're going to pursue your enemies or not. So if you fail, your cavalry actually pursues your enemies and abandons the battlefield, and then the loser retreats. The other let's say mini game. So you're going to do all the battles, or you would do this first battle, and then the second battle and the third battle, if there were other battles. The other mini game I would say is the sieges. So basically, if you have a block which is in a city, so we have this block here. So Hopton is in Oxford, and basically there's a siege. So we're going to use this siege marker 0, 1, 2, 3 to indicate how many siege turns have been done, and then obviously there are blocks. There are actually besieging that block. So I'm not going to go into detail about the siege. It's there's a whole mechanism around this, a bit like the battle. So it follows a sequence. So there's a siege marker that's going to go up. It's going to go higher and higher as the siege progresses round after round. There's the possibility of relieving a siege. There's sallying, where you actually go out and fight an open field. There's storming. There's a bombardment table, for the storming, to see if you've been able to breach the fort or not. So the X is no breach, and the ticks means a breach has occurred, and this depends on the die roll, and it depends also on the total artillery strength. So artillery, as you saw in battles, they only fire in the first round, so they might be a bit useless in a way. Not useless, but a little bit not as important. But in terms of sieges, your total artillery strength is going to give you an advantage in terms of sieges. And then the other thing is, like I mentioned, supply. So you're going to check. Each player is going to check how much supply they have at the end of the year. Each area has a number of supply that it gives. So, for example, there's different rules to this, but just as an example, any non-mountain area can supply 4 infantry or cavalry, but with a max of 2 cavalry. So it could supply, for example, 2 cavalry and 2 infantry, or 3 infantry and 1 cavalry. But the cities then give more. The cities give more supply than just the normal areas. Mountain areas give less supply, etc., etc. I've given a brief overview. This is a very brief overview of this game. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot of other rules that I haven't mentioned. There's a lot of exceptions. There's a lot of different events. There's a lot of nuance to this, so it really is a very deep game. I'm gonna now talk about the things that I like the most on this game, and some of the things that I don't like as much, and then I'll give it my final scoring. So in terms of things that I really like, again, I can't repeat it enough. The components, the map is spectacular. The blocks look very nice. The cards, the cards themselves also look quite nice. I mean, these were the 4s, maybe not, but like Peace in Ireland. Parliamentarian ships captured. I really like the look of these cards. It puts the history very much into perspective, and I really like the blocks as well. The illustrations on the blocks, they're quite simple, but like you see here, Henrietta, etc. So really good production on the game overall, from end to end. The other thing that I like very much on this game is the historical flair of the game, the simulation. Some games, some war games out there are um, they abstract a lot of things, and obviously a game always abstracts many things. But this game I feel has been really well researched. If you're interested in the theme of the English Civil War, you'll get a kick out of this. If you're interested in military history but you don't know enough about these events, you're going to want to research them. I think the game historically in terms of simulation is amazing. The other plus for me is that it's a tense game. It's got a great battle system. Um, the battle system takes a little bit to get used to, but it's very well done. It's very meaningful and tense, and the game itself is very epic. It feels very epic, and the interesting thing about this game is that it's probably better if you play against folks who have the same level of expertise that you have on the game, because um, there is very low room for error. So, like I showed here, there is a so you need to get the three VPs. So it's quite easy to make a critical error and then not be able to get. I'm just gonna um, zoom in now on this side of the board, which I haven't shown as much. Um, so it's very easy to make critical mistakes. So you need to really think what you're doing, and sometimes there's trade offs between going for it, not going for it. There's a lot of planning going on. It's an armchair general type of game. Um, I think the system itself is really good. So basically, it takes the great system of block war gaming, fog of war, etc., and it makes it into a more rewarding system, a system with more, I would say, meat around it, and just yeah, it's just a great game. Very epic, like great system, very rewarding. In terms of things that I don't like as much on the game, and um, these are not super important points, but I will mention them anyways. I think one thing that I've mentioned that is a bit on the churn side is this card management at the end of the year. Like I mentioned, that you need to check here the years and the arrows to see if the card is coming in or the card is coming out. This is really small. I think there's a kind of a churn element here that perhaps could have been avoided. I think it makes sense for the cards to come in and out because of historical accuracy, um, just I think this is something in the games I've done I do not look forward to, and my opponents do not look forward to either. I think the other thing is, and I do understand that this is historically accurate, but it feels a bit cheap. Is the cavalry pursuit, like I mentioned here during the battles, where you need to roll a die and check for cavalry discipline to see if your cavalry is going to uh, pursue your enemies and leave the battlefield. It just feels a bit unfair. Again, historically accurate, sure, I get it, but it feels a bit unfair that you're winning and then all of a sudden your cavalry might take off to pursue your enemy. Um, the other one is, and I've mostly mentioned this as a plus, but I will also mention this as a minus, is that it is a complex game. Um, I don't expect folks who are starting the hobby, the wargaming, or starting into wargaming. I don't think that there's a lot going on here. It's a game that takes a while to learn. I think if you play this for the first time, you're going to make some mistakes, and so and it's if you're a veteran war gamer, you're going to be fine. If you're not, there's certainly a learning curve here. Um, if you have a friend who can teach you the game, who's more of a veteran, that's fine. If not, this is going to be a bit of an uphill thing for you. So I think the game is intended for more advanced war gamers, certainly. Um, and the last thing I would like to mention is the rule book. The rule book is I would have preferred the rule book. The rule book looks very nice, as you can see. And it has everything, and I don't think there's anything there um, that is ambiguous or anything like that. But the rule book, the way it's organized, is not the best. The it's hard to find some information when you're looking for it. You're like, oh, what happens if with this exception and that exception? Where and you need to go around to try to find it. Um, so I think the rule book could have been better structured. Now I know that I believe there's a new edition of the game, if I'm not mistaken, and that the rule book has been revamped. And the other thing I would say is that besides that, obviously you have the player aids that you see here, and there are the community obviously always produces player aids for in other summarized rule books for these games. So you can get around this issue. It's just that I would have preferred for the rule book to have been better organized. In terms of complexity, and in terms of the rule book, what I would recommend is either to watch a video before reading the rule book or to just go through this playbook. This playbook has an extended example of play, which doesn't just talk about, okay, now do this, do that. It also talks about strategy and considerations. I think it's worthwhile. Usually I read the rule book and then I go to the extended playthrough if I feel the need to. In this one, I almost feel like either to watch first a video and then go to the rule book, or just do the playthrough first and then go to the rule book. This will give you a better idea of how the game is played. And then there's also some historical commentary here on the playthrough at the end, which is very nice. All in all, these are some nitpicks. There's no game is perfect, but I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. If you're a war gamer who likes medium to advanced games and you like block war games, and this is the theme, the English Civil War, that might interest you, I highly recommend getting this game. The only thing I would say is that this game doesn't really work for solitaire, so it is a two player game. But I've played it with different opponents and they all loved it. The complexity notwithstanding, so it's a very highly recommended for me. 8.5 out of 10. Thank you.